Kyiv in 3 days, or sometimes the 3-day operation. For Ukrainians and Ukraine's supporters, this became a symbol of Russian overconfidence, the belief that Ukraine would collapse, Kyiv would fall, and the whole war would be over almost immediately. But whenever this phrase appears, pro-Russian commenters often rush in with the same correction. Actually, nobody said that. It was all invented by the West. So let's check. Not by using Western intelligence estimates, not by relying on American media, but by looking at Russian and pro-Russian sources themselves, politicians, propagandists, state-linked outlets, prisoner testimonies, and the victory narratives Russia prepared before victory actually happened. Because Kyiv in 3 days is not just a quote, it is the perfect summary of Russian arrogance before reality arrived. And it started long before the full-scale Russian invasion of 2022. At the very beginning of the war, on April 25, 2014, Russian outlet Vzгляд published an article titled "We can reach Kyiv in 2 or 3 days." In that article, Russian military experts discussed what would happen if Russia invaded Ukraine. Their conclusion was very simple. There would be no serious resistance, and Russian troops would reach the capital in 2 or 3 days at most. The article was picked up by social media, and this is where the idea started spreading. Then, before the full-scale invasion, multiple Russian and pro-Russian figures made similar claims. For example, the dictator of Belarus, Russia's closest puppet ally, said, "The war will last 3 or 4 days at most. There will be no one there to fight us."
Украина никогда с нами не будет воевать. Эта война продлится, Володя, ну максимум 3-4 дня. Там некому будет против нас воевать.
Then there was Margarita Simonyan, one of Russia's most famous propagandists, who said, "We would defeat Ukraine in 2 days in a hot war. What is there to defeat, Lord?"
В горячей войне мы Украину победим за 2 дня. Чего ее побеждать-то, господи, ну Украина, подавили эти огневые точки.
Then there was Anatoly Wasserman, a member of Russian State Duma, who claimed the operation will go down in history as a 4-day war. He was more generous than the others. He gave Ukraine 4 days instead of 3. Meanwhile, some people were less generous. For instance, Zakhar Prilepin claimed that the war would be over in 6 minutes. There were others too, including an infamous segment from Olga Skobeyeva on Russian state television, where she shared a schedule for the invasion of Ukraine. It starts with waking up at 6 a.m. and ends with the fireworks at 9 p.m. the same day. There is actually a short compilation, pretty famous in Russian-speaking circles, that shows some of those claims.
In a hot war, we would defeat Ukraine in 2 days. What's there to defeat?
Kyiv would be taken so quickly.
A day and a half, maybe 3 days.
2 days, then the city falls.
We just raise an eyebrow, and Ukraine will understand everything. We'll take Kyiv.
Ukraine will never go to war with us. This war will last, Volodya, well, at most 3 or 4 days. There will be no one left to fight against us there.
Defense Minister Shoigu's order: wake up at 6 in the morning wash at 7, breakfast at 8, attack on Ukraine at 9 o'clock sharp, lunch at 12 o'clock sharp, at 1300 hours, the capture of Kyiv, at 1800, a Gazmanov concert, and at 2100, fireworks. The only thing missing is the date, Yevgeny Petrovich, but otherwise I think we're not far from the truth.
Then, on February 27, 2022, at the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, Oleg Matveychev, a deputy of the Russian State Duma, gave an interview and claimed that the whole of Ukraine would be defeated within 10 days. And then he said, 3 days remain until the capture of Kyiv, Odessa, Zaporizhia, Mykolaiv, and other key cities. Some will be taken today. So no, this was not invented by the West. Even Russian State Duma deputy literally claimed that 3 days remain until the capture of Kyiv. But there is another layer to this. Russians were not only bragging that they would defeat Ukraine within days, they actually planned for it. And there are multiple pieces of evidence showing that. For example, on February 26, 2022, just 2 days after the full-scale invasion started, Russian state outlet RIA Novosti published an article claiming the problem is gone, Ukraine has returned to Russia. The article was written as if the war was basically already won, as if Ukraine's future had already been decided. Then, when it became very clear that the celebration was premature, they quickly deleted it. But the internet remembers. Also, during the initial invasion, Russian troops were so lost in their delusional arrogance that some of them were bringing ceremonial uniform for celebration in Kyiv. Because apparently, when you invade a country and expect it to collapse immediately, you pack not only ammunition but also parade clothes. There were also captured Russian invaders during the first days of the war who confirmed the 3 days idea on multiple occasions. For example, one captured soldier said, "On February 24, While we were at military exercises, we were told that we would march along an unknown route. We took water and food for 3 days. In 3 days, we were supposed to return to camp. The same night, we crossed the border of Ukraine.
24 числа, находясь на учениях, нам сказали, что пойдем маршем по неизвестному маршруту. Взяли еды и воды на 3 дня. Через 3 дня должны были вернуться в лагерь. В эту же ночь мы прошли границу Украины.
Another captured soldier said, "We were told that we would go to the Ukrainian border for 3 days. On the night of February 23 to 24, 2022, we crossed the border. We were not exactly welcomed here in a friendly way." And another said, "We were going to cross into Ukraine for 3 days." All of this, the bold, baseless claims of politicians and propagandists, the statements of captured invaders, and the clear signs of preparation for a very quick victory shows the same thing. Russia expected the invasion to end within days. Then reality arrived. And memes like the 3-day war and Kyiv in 3 days, while still memes, actually represent Russian expectations quite well.